morning, guys. Today we're going to talk about a little bit of farm country, and I am on the new Spartan Forage app, and I would like to thank Brother Bill Thompson for letting me use this app for this video. He's such a good guy. He's really been really good to me, and I just absolutely love their app. They do an amazing job with it. But I wanted to talk about standing corn, and I had a guy ask me, did I think deer will bed in corn? Absolutely, they will. So this is what I've noticed about deer. And last week, it wasn't this, property, but I hunted a property similar to this, and I had standing corn, the entire field. And back over here, this was all oaks. So we'll just add an oak icon right there. I'm going to tell y'all guys what I had going on. So most of the bedding that I had been seeing over the years had been right in here along this river. And they was going in, crossing the creeks and going back in here and bedding. There's a lot of thicker cover back in there, and the deer was doing that bedding there. And it like to drove me crazy with these oaks being in here this year. We had a really good bumper crop, but anyway, the deer was bedding in the corner of these fields, and they was doing it so they could look down the edges. And they was also using the wind coming out of the river bottom here and out of the swamp. And they was laying there, and they could smell everything that was back in here in these oaks. And then, of course, they could see down these lanes, and if anything came from the standing corn, they could see it and then take off running, of course. And they had the perfect setup on me. And when I'd get in here and try to hunt the oaks or kick them out of the corn and they'd get into the oaks, they was just bedding in treetops that had fell down, like a blowdown tree, like during a storm or something. And it like to drove me insane. Instead of using their normal bedding areas, which is back in here where there was thicker cover, using edge and transition, they was just bedded in open timber. And normally they don't do that, but I guess with it being acorns the way it is now, or the way it was the other day, all that big bumper crop, they was eating oaks, eating corn, and then along these strips that are beside the edges of cornfield, you got grasses and briars and all sorts of goodness growing out on the edges of these fields too. So they had a perfect setup on us. And I was coming in and getting back here thinking I was going to catch them coming from the corn staging, from the oaks, then coming in here. But it didn't happen. They wasn't really staging anywhere. And most of the times they would have come from the bedding and staged in the oaks and then hit the corn. But with that corn being standing, it changed everything. If this corn had been cut, then they would have came from the bedding, staged at the oaks, and hit the corn at night. But it being standing, they wouldn't do it. And most of the bucks was bedded in the corners, like right here, and on long lines like that over there where they could see down the edges of these cornfields. So it made it really hard to hunt. And when you kicked them out of there, if you tried to hunt the edges, if they got any of your scent, they figured it out really fast, because once you walk down this, there's your scent. Once you walk down this, there's your scent. So I didn't really get an idea to think about how to hunt this until after the hunt was over. We only had a week to hunt it. Best way I could have hunted this would have been to come in here and set up on one of these corners and then done it in the morning time and used the timber to do it. So when a deer would have come down one of these edges to bed, I could have killed it. Or I could have hunted the edges and catching them coming out of these standing corn going to the oaks. I should have put myself in between the oaks and the corn somehow with the wind. And I didn't do it. I didn't realize what they had done to me until it was too late. So the normal bedding, was back over here, like where we had like thicker brush and stuff back over in here and edges and using ox bows and stuff. There was no beds to be found along none of this. And all the way around the property, I mean, there's thousands and thousands of acres that was open for, I think it was open 8 days. It was bow hunting only. So that's one thing I've noticed and I've learned this year. I'm not trying to be a know-it-all. I'm just explaining what I had happen to me in case somebody else has this happen. I want you to be able to capitalize off my mistakes. So use your woods when you have standing corn. You can hunt any. I would have been better setting up in between the oaks and the deer somewhere right in here. And then I could have catch them going back and forth. Because in all honesty, they wasn't traveling far. And there was probably a lot of it was daylight movement. And what I did find is the trees that was blowed down in the tops, the bucks was bedded in open timber, the does was bedded, all of them, they was all just bedding together like, I mean, they're not in rut or anything, but they was just all doing the same thing. Big does, little does, bucks, fawns, spikes, all of them was using the treetops, bedding in them. And what was also neat is right about dark when I was hunting back here, you should have seen the critters that would come out of the swamp headed to get them some oaks, eat them some acorns and get them some corn. And all through here was just ears of corn laying everywhere. I mean, everywhere were squirrels, coons, they ain't no telling all what, thousands of critters that lives in the woods had got ears of corns. And I was finding corn everywhere back in here. So it was pretty neat to see seeing a squirrel running around with a small ear of corn that he was trying his best to drag it and get it up a tree, and he kept dropping it. And that's the first time I had seen him do it. And I sat there and watch him just sit there and cut the corn off that cob. And it was really nice and neat to see stuff like that. But the deer put a whooping on me. And so if you guys ever run in this situation, try to hunt these corners. Because I did notice a lot, because you got this on some of these edges, this will be some type of grass before it gets into the field. And they had, their green grasses to eat, which are still green. And then they had their acorns all in through here to eat, and then the corn. And it was just set up for them to bed in these corners so they could see. And when they wasn't in the corners, they was in the stinking treetops. So don't let them fool you the way they fooled me, because I've been hunting a long time, and I never had a deer put the whooping on me like that. Because, I mean, especially with a bumper crop where, I mean, every oak in the woods had dropped. We had a big storm, and it blowed out. We had a severe storm, like came through with 30, 40 mile an hour winds for a couple hours. And it blowed every acorn we had out onto the ground. And we had red oaks on the ground, white oaks, water oak. Every oak had, There's still a few acorns hanging, the ones that didn't get blowed off, but there's so much food on the ground. And let me get a drink of my coffee. I was absolutely hammering that. But it was neat when I figured out these corners right here. And the deer had been so much in these corners over the summer, they had a lot of this corn knocked down. So they could actually bed here, and then they could see pretty good piece out in front of them, probably 50 yards. But they could see a long way down these rows right through here, down the edges. Because, it's just grass. Down this edge, they could see a long way. But then I got to thinking, when this field's cut and it's just, there's no corn there, they'll still bed in these corners like this, because then they could actually see all the way across, and it would make this even more better of a bedding area. But it would be a better hunting area if had it been cut the way I was trying to hunt it. There would have been more bedding back in here. Deer come from the bed, stage in oaks, and then hit the corn. Now that I figured this out, I'm going to use this tactic. Now I'll be set up between oaks and standing corn. If it's standing corn, if it's not standing, then I'll just go back to typical. Using the oaks where that's going to be staging. They'll be in there feeding on oaks after dark, and then later on in the night, around 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, they'll end up in these cut cornfields. But now let's delete these pins. I just wanted to show you guys that and talk about it a little bit. All right. Now let's switch times. Let's say this is beans, and it's summertime. So if this is the east over here, and the sun's coming up from the east, and it's setting over here in the west, your shade over here is going to be over here, because the sun's going to be over here. There's not going to be any shade over here in the evening. So if this is beans, and your guy's stake opens up while the bean tops are still green, right over in here, let me add a pin right here. I'm going to drop a pin. Your deer is going to be over here in these shady sides when this is planted in beans. And every year, a lot of farmers, are going to rotate the crops. So anywhere this shade is going to be casted when it's early bow season, and some of the tops will still be green where it's got shade because the sun hadn't killed the tops. Because once the sun kills the tops of them beans, they get bitter, and the deer don't really care for the bean tops. And there's so much other, luxurious green foods around, they're not going to stand out there and eat a bitter top. But over in the shady sides, you can get out here and you can still harvest deer eating the tops off beans. So that's another thing that I learned this summer. I was coming into properties and setting up off of the deer and watching them funnel out into the shady sides of the beans. And every field that I've went to that had some sort of western sunset with shade, I saw tons of deer like this right here. This would be a good place. If this here was shady, you could come in. You wouldn't even have to get out of your vehicle. You could just park up here and hang out with a spotting scope, some binoculars, or whatever, and you could get good intel on what kind of bucks are coming out into these bean fields. Over here, there's going to be shade. Down in here is going to be shade. And then in the morning times, your shade's going to be over here, and you could look down in here and glass for deer. But I done really good this summer locating bucks without having to step foot on property, just by doing some glassing. You don't have to have the most expensive pair of binos. I got some Vortex. You know, they're not that. I got the lower version of them. I don't have the most expensive. I think mine. I got some Razors, and then I got no, they're Raptors. I got some Raptors, and then I got a pair of Diamondbacks. But I still don't have the biggest pair made. But you could get a spotting scope too, fairly cheap, and do the same thing. And now they got the little things that you hook on your phone that you can hook your phone to the spotting scope, and it actually gives you a lot of eye relief doing that. So those things are pretty neat. But you could also get out and walk around and use the wind in your favor and look at all the bean fields that you're allowed to access. And if you're not allowed to access it, you could still park on a road somewhere and watch, neighboring properties that neighbor your property. As far as I know, there's no law against you looking at a bean field, even though you can't hunt it. I think you can still look at it. You could probably, like right here would be a good place. That's a dead end road. If you can see across these fields, you could glass deer coming from any direction, really. Any direction that there's shade in the evening. I've noticed that the evening was the best time for the glassing these fields, and I had my most luck in the evenings anyway, or right at sunlight. I done it a few mornings right as the sun was coming up, and had really good luck. But yeah, I wanted to talk about what them deer did to me. That really put the damper on that hunt, and it really hurt. I still got my pride a little bit hurt. But don't forget your corners, guys. Standing corn, hunt the corners of these fields. You got a corner there, a corner there, a corner there, and you got this little right here. The deer's going to be able to see a long way. So you could even hunt right here if you wanted to. Especially if you got oaks. If this was surrounded by pines, it might be different. But if you got oaks growing in here, then the deer's going to bed on the edges of these fields. So if you're hunting in a corner, you can see down this way, you can see down this way. Plus, you could catch deer coming out of the timber and funneling into these fields through the corners, or they could pop out up here. In early season, you could do a little rattling. You could do some grunting. Maybe call them up to you and get a shot. But I've noticed they like to make these little half circles too in these corners like this right here. And it's pretty neat to watch them do it because they'll stomp all this corn down over the summer. So they'll be able to lay here, see about 50 yards into the corn, and then they can see, golly, no telling how far down the sides. And then got the wind at their back coming up out of here. They can smell any type of danger. I mean, they're pretty smart animals. The way that the deer uses their nose, man, can you imagine having a nose like that? I don't know if it'd be good or bad. It could drive you crazy walking around smelling. You could smell your grandma's biscuits 5 miles away if you had a nose like that. But they'll also use these little points that stick out in fields too in bed because they can see a long way, especially if it's cut. Now, I haven't seen them bed in these points too much if they're standing corn because they can't see, and it freaks them out. A deer really likes to see. If they can see, it helps them out, especially with a wind at their back. They want to have the wind at their back and be able to see what's out in front of them. But yeah, the deer bedding in that open timber really got me last week. They didn't use none of the traditional bedding methods. Bedding up in the timber, laying in tree tops. You'd be trying to get back here to hunt the bedding. Deer just jumping everywhere, and they would run out into the corn. They would run back toward the bedding and then run down the sides. And then they just did not want to be in the bedding at all, like where you would typically find the bedding. They wanted to be in the oaks and the big timber, laying in the treetops, and then going back and forth. And big thing going on social media right now is, will deer bed in this standing corn? Yes, sir. Absolutely, they will. As a coon hunter, I have noticed, sometimes you get a dog that will go across a cornfield, and you have to go across the cornfield sometimes to go and get him. And well, I've jumped deer all in corn, especially at nighttime, but they will get out there in the daytime and lay. Mostly does, smaller bucks. I mean, you're not going to see a 200-incher bedding in the corn. I mean, if he did, he wouldn't be able to get his horns through there. But most of your trophy bucks is going to be in these corners or down one of these lines where they can see a long way and using the wind. And so check the corners and check along the lines. You're going to have to walk these lines if you're going to hunt the cornfield. But it's best to get between the standing corn and between the oaks if you have oaks. If this is pine, then you're a lot better off, because you can hunt, get back in here early in the mornings, find some blowdowns and set up in them. But I didn't realize what the deer was doing to me the other day until it was too late. They had already whooped me the entire week, and I seen one good buck, and he worked a scrape, and it was the first time I ever seen a deer work a scrape the way that one did. And he came out of a big treetop, got up and walked over to where there was a scrape, and he worked it for 30 minutes at 80 yards. And I had actually saw that scrape when I came in the woods, and I thought the scrape was an older scrape because I forgot about the storm that we had the night before. I didn't think about that storm, and that storm had blew some leaves in it. And I was like, well, that's an old scrape. It's got leaves in it. And I went on. But what it was is he hadn't came through there yet that day to clean that scrape. So when he came through there, he really, really worked that scrape over. And I had him at 80 yards. I actually set up 80 yards from the scrape. And I was hunting a creek crossing, catching deer coming from one field, crossing a creek and going to another field. And boy, I sure messed up, because he came down through the oaks, got out of a treetop, and he worked the scrape. And I was set up over here with my back at this creek. There's a deeper part of the creek where deer couldn't, or not. I mean, they could cross it, but there wasn't a crossing there. There was actually I was set up to shoot deer at a deer crossing, and he came up the river and he worked that scrape for 30 minutes. And when he peed in it, I'll tell you what, there was about a half a gallon of urine went in that scrape. And he ventured on off into the corn, the sea of standing corn. But anyway, I'll talk about this app a little bit before I have to get off here. Man, Spartan Forge has come a long way. It's absolutely a gorgeous app. Got different levels now. You can like put yourself at ground level and travel, across the landscape, and you can bring yourself up a little higher. You can look straight down on a property. But what I really like about it is this. Let me turn this map back to flat. We'll zoom out of here. I only got access to this for a little while before they're going to start selling it. And bring you down here. We'll go down here in the southern United States. Get into some of this old hill country. This is where this app shines in my eyes. I hunt a lot of hill country, and to be able to see the hills the way this app shows them is amazing. I love the topo lines. Check out this 3D hill country look. I mean, this is amazing. It's awesome. Very, very, very awesome. Look at how the hollers and the hills lay. You can look from the top. You can bring it down, look from the bottom. You can just go all around these hills. It's a really neat app. Really neat. Let me pull back out of here. I may do another hill country video using this app. Because like I said, I really like this app. And they have been so good to me. So I thought I'd show y'all some of the 3D features of this map. You can't really see the 3D features as much when you're hunting flat land. I mean, if there is any rises whatsoever, you can see them. But that's absolutely cool, man. Very neat. Look at those hills. You see the little knobs pop up and the little hill country, and it's just kind of like floating through with a helicopter. You just fly around and look at tops of hills and sides of hills, and it's a very, very, very good app. Brother Bill and them, they work so hard. They do a really good job, and those guys are smart. A lot of people don't know, but Bill tracked terrorists, while he was in the military, and that was his job. So I'm so glad that he made this app. This is the only app I run now is the Spartan Forge app. It's a really great app. When we look at some of these maps that they have, it's absolutely gorgeous. But another thing that they do have I want to touch on real quick is, they got the moon phase, they got the wind, they got, your precipitation chance, barometer, chance, how much moon's got your luminance on the moon, what time first light's going to and last light will be for today. You got your prediction center. Today's movement is going to be full range. Pattern would be normal, and there's your barometer, the barometric pressure. We're just coming out of the new moon. It will show all in your area of what the breeding will be. Got your weather forecast. Shows your prevailing winds from the last 2 weeks, the last 4 weeks, the last 3 months. So it's really, really, really good app. Anyway, guys, that's just a sneak peek of the Spartan Forge app and a little video of what I wanted to talk about today. This has been a Backwoods Studio production. Please like and subscribe. And if you would like, check us out over on Facebook at Backwoods Mafia Inc.